Hello and welcome to Views on News. I am Jawad Tehami. In today's program, we are going to talk about the trade war between the United States of America and China that keeps escalating, with the tariffs imposed by US President Donald Trump on China have risen up to 145% in the retaliatory tariffs when China responded and said that it will fight to the end. Its retaliatory tariffs on the US have increased to 125%. Both of these largest economies of the world happen to be the largest or the major trading partners of each other, with the Office of the US Trade Representative saying that the trade in goods between the two countries in the year 2024 was recorded at $582.4 billion, out of which the US imports from China stand at $438.9 billion, and the exports to China from the US stand at $143.5 billion. That leads us to a concluding figure of $295.4 billion of trade deficit in favor of China. We've also seen, after there was an increase that was announced by President Donald Trump on China, there was an exemption which was announced by the Customs and Border Protection Authority of the United States of America regarding certain products, including the smartphones, the solar panels, the electronic products, and also the semiconductor chips. But President Donald Trump said that these particular exemptions were temporary. We've also seen Chinese authorities urging the US to correct its mistakes and take back all those imposed tariffs. We also saw that after 2nd of April, when US President Donald Trump announced tariffs all across around for 185 countries, there was a pause, 90-day pause announced by US President Donald Trump also, but he doubled down on China, as we have seen a continuous increase of tariffs regarding US imports from China. And in another major development now, US President Donald Trump has signed an executive order raising these tariffs for China to 245%. We'll be talking about this pressing issue. These two largest economies of the world, which happen to be the largest trading partners of each other, with our panelists. For that, we are honored to be joined in the studio by Mr. Zamir Ahmad Awan, foreign affairs expert. Mr. Awan, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Also in the studio, we are honored to be joined by Dr. UsmanChohan. He is advisor of economy at the Center for Aerospace and Security Studies. Dr. Chohan, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Later on in the show, we'll be joined by another participant. I'll be introducing him as he joins in. Let's begin the discussion with you, Mr. Awan. Where do you see this particular escalating trade war between the US and China in the larger scheme of things, as far as this bilateral relationship between the two countries is concerned?
Overall, it has a negative impact on the global economy, and it will geopolitics will be more hostile. However, in case of China, China is relaxed. They know what to do, and they are satisfied what are they are taking the countermeasures, and China will have a very, very minimal harm, while the American economy or America will suffer a lot. First of all, China has a huge economic base. They have abundance of raw material and immense workforce. So in manufacturing, no other country can compete them in the cost of production, the material cost, and in any case, in any way, no other country can compete China. On the other hand, China has a huge domestic market. Even that, they don't export to America, they will survive. Furthermore, China has a goodwill, a strong goodwill in the rest of the world. Around 165 countries are very close allies, our Belt and Road Initiative, and influenced by China. So China can do a trade with the rest of the world. Even they can ignore the American market. However, America has not imposed this tariff on China, but it has import on the imported product. And who will import the American company? They will pay this tax, this tariff. So his cost will increase. So he will sell his product more expensive. Cost of the product plus the tariff cost and then his profit. So the local market, there will be price hike, there will be inflation, and affordability of the American public to purchase these products will reduce dramatically or sharply. So in the case, if the people of America, they are not satisfied, they might protest, they might go for rallies, they might oppose it, or they will find many other ways to express their anger. The simplest anger they can express that in the next election, they might not vote for President Trump.
Just started the new administration. He has
Even
taken
that-
over power
even
on just
that-
the 20th of January.
Even that in the midterm election, they can express their anger. Even that in worst scenario, they can go for impeachment of the president. I mean, is more harm for the Americans,
So it's
less harm for the Chinese.
less harm for the Chinese. So when we talk about this particular issue, as far as the kind of impact the US consumer are going to have because of this particular move by the US administration at this point in time. So do we understand that this particular entire thing was not well thought out?
It is the President Trump's style. He signed this tariff executive order in a press conference. That is his personal style. He want to show that he is a strong man and he is a great leader and he can do this, he can do that. Actually, the proper procedure is that there are certain committees in Senate and the Congress. They will debate it, they will make the recommendation, and there will be cabinet, and they will make the recommendation. They should have consulted with the stakeholders, with the think tanks, with the academicians, with the business entrepreneurs. I mean, they should discuss all these things with the stakeholders and get strong recommendation based on consensus. Then they implement or they issue the executive orders. Then the whole nation will be behind that decision. In this case, it seems that it is personal decision of President Trump.
Okay.
That's why his popularity graph has gone down. There are protests and rallies across America.
So do we understand that the office of the president doesn't have the right understanding of the things at this point in time? And had there been a consensus when this particular issue might have gone to the Senate as well as House of Representatives, and a consensus would have developed over it, in that case, do you think these tariffs of this much percentage, specifically talking about vis-a-vis China, would have been justified?
In fact, there is a anti-China sentiments in both parties, Republican or Democrats, both. But if it has been debated in the Congress, Senate and respective committees, there must be some opposition. There must be some opposition. Overall, both of them are anti-China. But there must be some logic to address these issues in an appropriate manner.
Okay, so Dr. UsmanChohan, what's your understanding? When we look at these stats, which the Office of U.S. Trade Representative talks about $582.4 billion of trade in goods between the two countries back in 2024. And that clearly shows that the U.S. imports from China stand considerable a higher number, $438.9 billion as compared to its export of $143.5 billion to China. So those stated objectives or the goals by President Donald Trump, don't you think they are actually aimed at overcoming this particular trade deficit with China? And we might find some sort of a logic when seen from the American perspective.
First of all, thank you for having me on your show. Even if you frame this in terms of the American perspective, Trump has offered contradictory promises to the American people on this subject. And I'll explain why. On the one hand, he says that putting tariffs will raise a lot of revenue, and so it'll address the deficit and it'll make America stronger. He aims for $6 trillion on one side in raising revenues from imports. That's what the tariffs are. And at the same time, he's promised America a manufacturing renaissance, that industry will grow and will make things locally. Here's the problem. If you import a lot and you make $6 trillion worth of tariffs, you're not going to have a manufacturing renaissance because you're still importing from the rest of the world. And at the same time, if you have a manufacturing renaissance and if you're making everything locally, you won't get 6 trillion in imports because you'll be making things yourself. This is the first point.
That's quite a paradoxical situation.
It is a very paradoxical situation. If you allow me to humorously put it, it's the conflict between the art of war and the art of the deal. The art of war, what the Chinese are using, says you know yourself and you know your enemy, you will succeed in all battles or 100 battles. The art of the deal, which is Trump's book, if I paraphrase it, it is in order to confuse the enemy, you must first confuse yourself. And that is what Trump has done. Ideally, he has confused himself. And I will put this in a serious context as well. He miscalculated severely. He thought that if the stock market goes down in reaction to it, it's no big deal. Because the earnings of companies, as Sir was saying, will be compressed by the additional cost that they have. That's fine. But people will simply go into treasuries, into the bond market. It'll be all right. But here's what happened. Instead of the stock market going down and people moving to treasuries, they skipped the US treasuries altogether. They treated America as a toxic asset, as in a third world emerging market, and they instead moved into gold, into crypto at times, into the Swiss franc, and into German bonds. They said that America as a whole is toxic, and this was the miscalculation. So Trump had to back down, and he said, well, the market was a bit queasy. And a word he invented, yippee. It's a little bit yippee, he said. I don't even know what that means, but this reaction tells you that he had to back down. He miscalculated so much.
So he miscalculated when we talk about the other countries. So why China happened to be the exception? But he doubled down when it came to the case of China.
Because ideologically, this has been an idea where he has criticized his predecessors. He's criticized Biden, he's criticized Obama for going too easy on China. And China has already, on purchasing power terms, surpassed the United States as number one. The whole narrative of the United States, at least since the end of the Cold War, has been USA equals number one. The moment USA equals number two, the whole thing falls apart. What else does America have? And in the meantime, China is taking 3 lines of attack which are very strategic and very precise. The first is the rare earth thing, because that stops American manufacturing renaissance. It's dead on arrival. It simply won't begin. The second is on semiconductors. So the high-end manufacturing, if they wanted to, they won't be able to get it done in America because semiconductors are simply so important to the digital economy. And the third is aerospace. Coming from the Center for Aerospace and Security Studies, I can tell you that aerospace has huge second-order effects in an economy, including innovation, including employment, etc. So he is struck at Boeing. And that's how you, with just 3 small tools, before you even go for the nuclear option like selling your treasuries, you've already put America way far back than it was intended.
Mr. Awan, now when we talk about, you already talked of that how it is going to have an impact on the consumers within the United States of America. When we talk about the retaliatory tariffs, you already in your first take talked about the strength of China's economy. It has got that consumer base domestically as well. So there's going to be less impact as far as China itself is concerned. What about the retaliatory tariffs of 125%? We saw earlier when there was a gradual imposition of tariffs on the part of the US president towards China. There was a very specific response, but when it came to 34%, there was an immediate retaliatory tariff of 34% on the part of the Chinese also. Retaliatory tariffs on the part of China towards the US stand at 125% as compared to 145% of the US on China. I'll come back to you for your detailed view regarding as to what could be the impact of this retaliatory tariffs when we talk about China itself and the consumer domestically, which we already alluded to within China. I have to go for a quick short break. After this particular short break, we'll be resuming the discussion from here. For that, stay tuned. Welcome back to Views on News. In today's program, we are talking about the escalating trade war between China and the United States of America. In the studio, we are honored to be joined by Mr. Zamir Ahmad Awan and Dr. UsmanChohan. Before heading for the break, we were in discussion with Mr. Awan. Mr. Awan, now these retaliatory tariffs,
Yes.
when we specifically talk about China, 125% standing at this particular point as compared to 145% by the US on China. What sort of impact, as you already mentioned, that the tariffs which are imposed by the US are going to be counterproductive as far as their impact for the US consumers domestically is concerned, is going to be grave. So what about these retaliatory tariffs on the part of China?
I lived in China for a long time, so I understand their psyche. Chinese are more friendly people. They avoid confrontation. They will never initiate any dispute, and they try to resolve the dispute. And they are submissive and friendly, even that they compromise to avoid confrontation. Specific in this case of tariff, since President Donald Trump launched his election campaign, he was announcing the tariff and the China and all these things. So the Chinese were very smart. They have discussed and deliberated in depth. They have done proper homework. Their think tanks, their governments, their ministries, their respective stakeholders, they have worked very well. And after having a broad-based consultation with the stakeholders, the Chinese government has prepared a strategy how to counter it. So China has taken the step which is very firm, very solid, and very appropriate. China is not scared of these tariff war. And if a war is imposed on China, they will fight till the end with full force. They will avoid. They have, before imposing these tariffs, China has warned US and they have requested them, they have asked them. A lot of messages from the China were positive. But once President Trump has imposed these tariffs, so they have to retaliate.
So is it going to have any adverse impact when it comes to the Chinese interests is concerned?
Definitely, there will be some impact on the Chinese economy also.
What sort of an impact? How could it manifest?
If they cannot export to America, one of the very big market, and China was enjoying trade surplus with America, of course, there will be harm to China. But
so
China can compensate it.
This particular figure, the trade deficit $295.4 billion, as per the Office of the U.S. State Representative back in 2024. Do you think by imposing these tariffs, this particular trade deficit could be overcome?
No. The trade deficit is China enjoys trade surplus with almost every country in the world. So there is no exception, America. But there are ways and means to address these issues amicably with mutual consultation, and China is always willing to help. Even that with Pakistan, we have the trade surplus in favor of China, and China is trying to help and narrow down this gap. China is always friendly and cooperative with any country. But if China is threatened or China is punished or penalized, of course they have to retaliate. Definitely, there will be some impact on the Chinese economy too, but very little.
Very little. I get your point. On the phone line, we are honored to be joined by another participant, Professor Dr. Mohammed Naveed. He is global financial expert. Dr. Naveed, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Whom do you think this particular escalating trade war is going to be detrimental for, the US or China?
Thank you for having my insights. My voice is audible?
I can hear you.
I can see the perspective that is being well taken by my fellow the panelists, but I have to look into this the populist regime, the perspective that is coming as economic romance. It's not happening with the Chinese in particular. It's happening with the friendly economies as well. You have to look into this the approach that is being taken by the U.S. economy under the regime of this populist government. They pitched a protectionist agenda as one of the imperative measures to revive U.S. industry. So I would say this is one of the turnaround point, economic turnaround on the part of the USA. That is to bring, in particular, China. That's the point of negotiations. Now, you have to look into definitely on the part of the deficit, to almost $295 billion is a huge deficit that is already on the part of the US economy. Now, to combating this, one of the trade deficit, so then you have to look into this protectionist agenda that is to bring the China, that is one of the, I would say, after Mexico and Canada, the third largest supplier of America, according to the reports that we received from the US Department of Commerce. 47% of all US imports, that is mechanical appliances, ranging from the low to the mid-range tech products, that is being provided by the Chinese economy. So looking into these, one of the unconventional approach, I think this is one of the turnaround point on the part of the US economy, that how we have to make this the trade deficit that need to.
Do you think, I want your understanding, Dr. Naveed, regarding this particular, the stated objectives of US President Donald Trump by imposing these tariffs. At one side, he has announced a 90-day pause for the rest of the countries, but doubling down on China with the accumulative tariff vis-a-vis China standing at 145%. Do you think, and then we see retaliatory tariffs on 25% on the part of China towards the US. I want your understanding the larger perspective. When you calculate the things with this given trade deficit between the two countries that is in the favor of China, $295.4 billion, whom these tariffs are going to be more detrimental to?
If we see the holistic perspective, I think the economic turbulence are definitely promoting by this the Trump reciprocal the tariffs, I would say. Significant risk definitely would be there. The big amount of the retrenchment, I would say, according to even the spokesperson of IMF, that's amounting to 80% of these the bilateral mercantile trading between these two economies. So globally speaking, definitely the risk profiling is high on the part of these economies. But if we have to look into the perspective of China, I think they are amazingly productive. If we have to look into, they are amazingly logistically, infrastructure network, they are providing you the advantage that is the manufacturing, the cost per hour. For the US economy, it's a $30. But for the perspective of China, it's just amounting about $12 per manufacturing hours. So from this perspective, I think we have to look into this perspective in the long run. It's not very sustainable. So these Trump tariffs are dramatically, they will be a shock, I would say, to the US economy in the long run. But the point to ponder, there is more perspective. Electronics and the digital, the firms, they are exposed to the latest tariffs. For instance, today, the Apple, they are going through the high risk profiling. I think this is one of the, I would say, the setback that has been associated. So in the long run, it's not going to have the impact of the GDP, but it would further boost inflation on the part of the US economy. So this, what I said in the beginning, so this protectionist agenda that is set by the US economy, that this is not factoring the long-term perspective. So looking into this economic romance that's happening with the, in particular China, it's not going to have the impact. I feel, I could be wrong, it could have another systemic risk. This systemic risk could trigger another crisis that could lead towards the, if you recall, the global financial crisis that we have experienced in 7-8. So this could, in the long run, could be another systemic hit that could have some spillover impact on the emerging and developing economies as well.
Right, Professor Dr. Mohammed Naveed, global financial expert. Thank you very much for joining us at Views on News tonight. Really appreciate that. Dr. UsmanChohan, when we talk about, there was an exemption that was announced by the Customs and Border Control Department of the United States of America. So that primarily deals with 20 leading products, including the smartphones, solar panels, electronic products, semiconductor chips. Why that exemption?
Because of corruption, essentially. You can lobby the administration if you're powerful enough and big enough to get exemptions for what you have. So Apple managed to do that. The problem is that in America, the backbone, like any strong economy, would be small businesses, and they can't lobby for those exemptions. Whenever you create distortions in an economy, you will have these kinds of bribery and corruption issues, and small players cannot compete. They don't have a level playing field. Apple is a multi-trillion dollar company. It can find its way through no matter what. And this is unfortunate. It basically shows that the United States is behaving more and more like a emerging market with poor institutions, with all these exemptions. And you're seeing that there's deeper problems in America right now. Basically, if I can frame it for you, America used to have one problem. Now it has three problems economically. The first was it has a fiscal problem. It has a $36 trillion debt. And its GDP is $36 trillion, coincidentally. So now its debt to GDP ratio is 100%, which is very worrying. Now, they're cutting on government, which is the good stuff.
Dr. Chohan, I see your partner for the interjection over here. I'll have to go for a quick short break, and after the break, we'll resume the discussion from here. For that, stay tuned. Welcome back to Views on News. We are joined in the studio by Dr. UsmanChohan and Mr. Zamir Ahmad Awan discussing the escalating trade war between China and the United States of America. Before heading for the break, we were in conversation with Dr. UsmanChohan. Dr. Chohan, please go ahead. Please finish your thought.
America used to have one economic problem, and now it has three. It has $36 trillion in debt, and it has $36 trillion of annual GDP. So its debt to GDP ratio is 100%. This means that now it is starting to get in a worrisome place where it needs to be able to finance things. But as the bond yield situation showed you, there is no trust in American assets the way, so it cannot simply print money. That creates the second problem, which is a monetary problem. In previous crises, 2008, 2020, they could simply issue more money or more treasuries, more securities, and the world would eat them up. They would buy them. Now, nobody is keen to have this. And in addition, the percentage that China owns of treasuries, it has also been decreasing. So 30% is foreign owned, out of which it used to be 30% of that China. They have been removing it since 2011, and now they're just at 8%. So the world is starting to shed this treasury, and that creates the third problem, which is their currency problem. The confidence in the dollar as the central pillar of the global financial system is weakening, and people are trying to diversify as much as possible and in accelerated manner. When you have all three of these problems, you should not be playing such dangerous games with the global financial system, because your own position is so weak. And because of this now, you are seeing popularity, the polls show that Trump is falling precipitously. He's plummeting. So in less than 100 days, he has gone from, in terms of the poll, this is a CBS poll, confidence on the economy from 70% to 50%. His overall rating similarly has dropped by about 20 percentage points in less than 100 days, which never happens. So Americans are realizing that this is not good for them as well.
Okay, so what's your understanding when it comes to the direct impact the U.S. consumers are going to face with this?
There is an estimate that it should cost them about $4,000 per household, and this is at a time when, you know, most Americans don't make $4,000 per month. It's just difficult to get by there, and the social safety net and all these things are being eroded. That is in the pretext, under the pretext of reducing the fiscal issue, but still you have defense spending increasing, which is going to Israel. It's not going to America, and at the same time they are giving a tax cut, which is a deficit. It adds to the deficit, and it's going to the rich. So the cost to the American taxpayer, ordinary people, is terrifying, and you cannot quantify it yet because there's so much volatility. We don't know what exemptions this, 10% today, 120 the next day. Nobody really knows what is going to happen. Anybody who tells you with confidence right now is lying. But the fact is that in such an unpredictable environment, there is a harrowing sense of uncertainty in America, above all, about what the future will be like.
There is also, you talked of that very opinion poll
Yes.
by CBS, right? So there is another analysis by Yale Budget Lab that talks about the impact as far as the job loss is considered after these tariffs. It gives a figure of 740,000 people losing their jobs by the end of year 2025. Isn't that humongous?
It is, and I think it's an underestimate, because the reason that job losses are going to happen is because many businesses in America operate on quite a thin margin. And so their cost structure, if you look at their income statement, already didn't have much space. If you add these tariffs in, then you're increasing and expanding the cost of goods sold, so the margin will really compress. Where can you then find a way to save up to just make a bare minimum as a company? You're going to have to lay off workers to then compress that. When you have this unemployment, plus you've eroded the social safety net, you will see serious social consequences such as crime, violent crime particularly, or arsons and so on, because you haven't thought through the whole thing. So,
Okay, do you think, is there going to be any impact, the same question that I asked Mr. Zamir Awan regarding the retaliatory tariffs by Chinese on the US 125% now?
yes, because particularly, well, they've capped it because they said anything above 125 doesn't make sense anyways. So that's enough. But their strategic attacks on through rare earths, through semiconductors, and through aerospace already kill the dream of an advanced manufacturing sector in America. Just with 3 small levers, you've already ended their ambitions right there and then.
Right, Mr. Zamir Ahmad Awan, when we talk about the credibility of the US administration, in particular when we talk about in the Committee of Nations, on 2nd of April, US President Donald Trump comes with this particular announcement of imposing the tariffs to 185 countries. 60 of those countries apparently had a trade surplus with the United States of America. Just a few days later, he announced a 90-day pause. So what does that basically signify? First, you are announcing a tariff and then you're going for a 90-day pause, except with one country.
As a matter of fact, the tariffs are usually used to protect the local industry. The first of all, as a matter of principle, America do not have consumer industry. They have high-end, high-tech industry, weapon industry, which they don't need to protect. No, there is no competition of American weapons or high-techs.
Right.
And consumer industry, the low-end industry, they don't have. So the tariff is not actually meaningful in this sense. The secondly, Donald Trump has used tariff as a political tool. It is not only offended his enemies, but also even the close allies. It will have a far-reaching political impact. You know, when American attacked Afghanistan in 2001, there was a collision of or alliance of 58 countries who were involved in a war in Afghanistan. When there was a war in Iraq, America was not alone. There was 46 countries. The same way they attacked Libya and Syria in alliances. Even that in the World War II, it was the alliances which make America a winner. But now America has offended its even close allies like Canada, UK, EU, and some other close allies. So politically, America is not in a position to be a global leader or to launch a new war, because alone America maybe is not in a position to go for the war. And alliances, close friends, he has offended already. I think that it will have an adverse impact on American reputation and credibility. They announce it tariff and then they say delay for the 90 days. It means that they have not thought properly, or they have not done their homework before announcing. They should have proper homework, and then they should announce, and then they should stick with their policies.
Is there, do you think, is there any chance of a broader consensus that could be developed when it comes to addressing this particular issue?
I believe that Trump has not that chemistry. He is a different person. But Biden or Obama, they, if in their tenure, if such crises happen, they might go for the broader consensus.
The broader consensus when it comes to the entire world, the Committee of Nations, responding to this particular action.
This is going to be, that is going to anti-America consensus are building up. You know, just after imposition of American tariffs, EU president talked to the Chinese leadership, and there are broad-based consensus that how to handle this situation. Even that Italian Prime Minister has visited China and President Xi Jinping is visiting Vietnam, Malaysia, and some other countries in the region. There are going to be consensus how to counter the American tariffs, but this will be anti-American consensus.
Right, Dr. UsmanChohan, when you talk about the agriculture sector in particular, there are findings that Trump's first trade war with China from 2018 to 19 resulted in billions of dollars of lost revenue for American farmers. So these retaliatory tariffs on part of the Chinese this time around also focus on that particular sector as well. So how do you think it's going to be impacted?
You're absolutely right. In addition to rare earth, semiconductor, and aerospace, there is a big lever that China still has. It's not exercising it fully yet, but basically the things that America needs from China, it'll struggle to get from elsewhere. But the things that China gets from America, it can get from elsewhere. For example, soybeans. For their pig industry and stuff, you can simply go to Brazil and Argentina. This will decimate the Midwest, and the Midwest is the most ardent supporter of Trump. And in the last time, in 2016 or 2017 onwards, they targeted specific goods like that. So, for example, ketchup from Kentucky or other such immediate agricultural items that actually affected red states that they then had to lobby Trump. So you can always, art of war, get to your enemy to fight for itself as opposed to art of the deal.
Okay, one very important aspect to it, Pakistani authorities responded to this 29% imposition of tariffs on the part of the US, although we're also in that particular list where there is a 90-day pause for these tariffs, but still a baseline 10% of the tariffs apply to all those countries. Pakistani authorities have repeatedly said that they are concerned. Of course, there is not going to be retaliation on the part of the Pakistani authorities. They've also decided to send a high-level delegation to the US in order to promote trade relations with the US, also negotiate these tariffs. What are the options at this particular point in time, and how these tariffs, if implemented, are going to affect Pakistan's economy? In that particular scenario, what are the ideal lines to navigate through this particular regime?
Yes, well, I see 4 ways out of this for Pakistan. One is simply to ignore it because the relative cost differentials are not so high in the areas where we export. So just ignore it. The second is to send a trade delegation, and you may actually get some extra concessions because Trump, acting like a king, will want that tribute from the periphery. So you can do that.
Already 75 different countries have approached.
Correct. Many countries have taken this approach. The
So
third,
they are likely to get concessions.
yes, I think so.
So,
because
but when
Trump-
China talks of going into dialogue to discuss these tariffs, so
yes.
is that being considered, or should it be considered by the US administration, or why is it not being considered at the moment?
Well, China has very little to gain from doing that, but we do have something to gain from that. And even then, it's just a minor approach. At the same time, the third option is to diversify your end market. So you have GSP Plus and all this, go more to the EU, do market research in Africa, Latin America.
Diversifying, right.
And the fourth one is what we talked about in the last episode. Just import 3.5 billion worth of stuff from America, you square it even, and those can be valuable things for our economy. There you go.
Right, Mr. Awan, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
In fact, Pakistan's export to America is basically textile. And we have competition with many other countries in the textile export, like Vietnam, Bangladesh, Malaysia, India, Turkey, and all these countries. If we compare the tariff on other countries, is mostly very high, up to 90%, 48%, 46%, 38%, something like this. Only India has less tariff. We are 29% and
26%.
27%. Only 2%, which is negligible. There's no big gap. Turkey has only 10%. We might have not edge over Turkey, but with the other rest of the countries, we have the edge. We are a winner. We are a beneficiary of Trump's tariff in case of textile export to America.
Right, Mr. Zamir Ahmad, Awan, Foreign Affairs expert, thank you very much for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Dr. UsmanChohan, advisor of economy at the Center for Aerospace and Security Studies. Thank you very much for your time also for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. With that, we come to the end of today's episode. Till the next one, take good care of yourselves.